Hello, Internet friend. Today on Value Side, Kevin Warsh assumes the leadership of the Federal Reserve at one of the most challenging times ever. I'm David Ravel. Well, on Friday, May 22nd, Associate Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas swore in Kevin Warsh as the 17th chairman of the Federal Reserve Board. Chairman Warsh will guide the nation's financial system for the next 4 years, and like most recent chairs, he faces a most challenging economic environment. And that seems to be the recent pattern for federal chairmen. Three of the last four began their terms just before a financial crisis. Only Janet Yellen escaped this fate. Ben Bernanke, for instance, began his term just 24 months before the great financial crisis, which Wall Street considers the worst financial crisis in recent times. Warsh's predecessor, Jerome Powell, began his term just 22 months before the COVID-19 pandemic and the shortest but steepest recession on record. When Alan Greenspan sat down at the chairman's desk, it was only 8 months before the 1987 stock market crash. But no matter who assumes the head of the Federal Reserve, they must know from day one that the potential for an economic crisis lies just beyond the next business day. Kevin Warsh is no different. Although the specific issues may vary, the real possibility is that a crisis may be on the way. Inflation, or as it's more popularly called nowadays, affordability, is the number one issue, driven principally by President Trump's war with Iran and the closure of the vital Strait of Hormuz. Petroleum prices are rising across the nation, with the current price of gasoline, regular class, at $4.51, up 42% from last year's price. Now, energy is the most fundamental of all economic variables, and that's reflected in our overall price measure, the Consumer Price Index. We began the year with the CPI measured at 2.63%, while April's CPI came in at 0.64%, and that might not seem like much, but if the next 11 months come in at the same fraction, our annual inflation rate would rise to over 7% per year, the highest rate since the stimulus-powered COVID-19 bounce back in the year 2022. Fortunately, the CPI is not measured that way. Instead, it's an average of the last 12 months, leading to the current reading of 3.78%. Still, it's apparent to all that inflation is our number one economic issue, and the one that new chair Kevin Warsh needs to address. Finally, President Trump's welcome of Chairman Warsh to his new position declared, quote, "The Federal Reserve is the pillar of the world's financial system and the most important central bank anywhere in the world, with a history stretching back more than 100 years. It's truly the institution that's most looked up to and respected, and now taken on a new, even higher level of respect, in my opinion. And honestly, this is Trump speaking, and honestly, I really mean this. This is not said in any other way. I, Donald Trump, want Kevin to be totally independent. I want him to be independent and just do a great job. Don't look at me. Don't look at anybody. Just do your own thing and do a great job. Okay?" So said President Donald Trump. A remarkable mandate from the president who campaigned so long and hard that the last Fed chair lower interest rates. But after all, that was 3 days ago. Do you suppose that Trump's mandate still stands? This week, a look at the cost of gasoline. Now, we're wrapping up Memorial Day holiday, a day reserved for honoring those U.S. military personnel who fell while servicing the armed forces. Millions of Americans will set aside a few moments to honor their sacrifice. It's also the unofficial start of summer for many. It's the first time all year we can escape the confines of home and take to the open highways to get away. Memorial Day is the most significant driving holiday each year, with the Automobile Association of America estimating that 39 million Americans will drive more than 50 miles to celebrate the end of winter and the beginning of warm weather. Each time they drive to the gas station to fill her up, they'll be reminded that their dollars don't stretch as far as they did last year. In Walmart's earnings report released this week, it noted a trend they haven't seen since the great financial crisis 18 years ago. People are now limiting the amount of gas they purchase. Fill-ups are a thing of the past. Drivers limit their gasoline purchase to less than 20 gallons. Price is having an impact. But if you think it's bad for the average holiday traveler, consider the poor truckers. They're the ones who literally make this economy run. Virtually everything on our store shelves must travel by trucks at some point. Yes, it may begin its journey by ship, plane, or rail, but actual store delivery is inevitably by trucks. And for the truckers, the current price hike is oppressive. Last year, the national average for a gallon of diesel was $3.54. This year, $5.60. That's a 58% increase. Now consider this. For a long-term hauler whose tank holds 200 gallons, the price to fill up has gone from a little over $700 to over $1,100, an expense that many independent truckers have to put on the credit card. And now you know why truckers may only choose full, highly profitable loads, which can help them pay for the fuel. Page 3, a look at the consumer. For 48 years, the University of Michigan has measured the outlook of the average American consumer. Begun as a graduate school exercise, the university has over the years become an expert in their survey methods and data collection. In fact, they now have the most authoritative data set on the economy and financial attitudes of our nation's consumers. Imagine what they've observed over nearly half a century. A whole panoply of economic conditions, from a stock market crash to a couple of bouts of inflation, several regional wars, domestic riots, almost any financial condition that you can imagine. Currently, the president and others tell us that we're living in the best of times. A golden era, he says. After all, the stock market continues to reach record highs, and a select group of stocks, generally those tied to artificial intelligence, are making people rich. So it must follow that the University of Michigan's Consumer Confidence Survey must also be hitting new highs, but not so fast. In fact, just the opposite. The Michigan survey is crashing, hitting lows never before reached. Here in May, the survey fell to 44.8, the lowest level ever. To give some perspective, before this year, the survey never fell below 50. It now stands more than 10%, those prior floors. Now, don't take this lightly. We live in a consumer-driven economy, and consumers drive more than 2/3 of all commercial activity. Ordinary Americans like you and I make everyday purchases the heart and soul of our commercial system. If we turn sour on our future, if we put our hands in our pockets and stop spending, if we begin hoarding instead of spending, this economy will be in a world of hurt. And that's just what the University of Michigan survey is telling us. Page 4, our conversation. Now, the value side community is one of the most thoughtful and insightful on the internet. Whether you connect with us via our several reading, audio, or video platforms, your impact makes a difference. Thank you for engaging with the value side. Here are some insightful comments from this week. From the article The Mystery of Jobs, How Numbers Don't Add Up, Jim challenged our labor force data on Medium, prompting us to review the official numbers. Here's the latest published data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's the total number of working Americans, the labor force. If you look at the upper right-hand corner of a chart, you'll see that there are currently 1.5 million fewer workers than last year. We're currently at 170 million workers versus 171.5 million last year. Just why this decline is occurring is not certain. I've suggested that demographic changes might be a partial explanation, but I don't believe this is the entire reason. We need to dig deeper into this decline in the labor force. Thanks, Jim. Now, from the article Finding the Real Cost of the Iran Conflict, both Gale and Raymond suggested that we should include the higher energy costs in our financial statements for the war. And they're absolutely correct. I agree that the true cost of this conflict should include the financial burden by Americans. Unfortunately, we're not likely to see any of that analysis coming out of Washington. So I'm afraid to say that much of the research will have to be figured out on our own. I'll keep working on this. And that's today's Value Side. For all of our articles and podcasts, visit valueside.com. I'm David Ravel. ValueSide is independently written and researched. The views expressed are strictly my own.